and welcome to Afflictions Sugarcoated, a podcast where we sugarcoat some of the world's so called afflictions and rate its plausibility out of a scale of 1 to 5. I'm Minnie Kim, and today we will be sugarcoating talent. So, I recently read a book called The Tyranny of Merit by Harvard professor Michael Sandel. Obviously, love all of his books. You should read most of them, especially Justice and this book as well. It's a very interesting book. I would definitely recommend it. And I mean, his books are always good. And I think it paved an interesting perspective of the world today in terms of merit and talent and whether we morally deserve what we actually get, whether the environmental situation actually weighs in as much as it, the populist backlash, all of that. And I think it emphasized the hubris that comes along with merit, the, again, populist backlash when it came to technocratic and meritocratic elites. It's all very interesting stuff. And then this question of talent comes in. Do we deserve talent? Is talent everything? What exactly is talent? Should we use talent to distribute the common good? Like all of these questions regarding what actually talent means in the world we live today, maybe in the past, maybe in the future, this all pops up, right? And all of this is very puzzling and difficult to comprehend. I mean, we could probably answer and provide layers of analysis for each and one of them, but like I think that would be too long for me to actually accomplish. And yeah, so let's delve into the problems of talent and whether this actually makes sense, right? But before all that, I should also mention that talent is not everything. As a person who is not naturally talented in like almost anything, it could just provides me to say that yes, talent is absolutely not anything you should not stress over not being able to like take a test without studying. That's not necessarily always good. I think Michael Sandel also emphasizes this in his book as well. I mean, always talent comes with hard work, right? Although it is a big part in everything, whether Usain Bolt had the talent to do this and everything, you can't swim as fast as Michael Phelps, like, no matter how hard you train. I think that it's important to emphasize and highlight the fact that, yes, talent may be a beautiful thing. It is a natural thing of beauty surrounded by prospect and other types of merit. I think that it's, yes, it is something, but it's not everything. Yes, I just thought we should mention that before I went on to other things. So I noticed a long time ago that talent is a very fragile thing. You either have it or don't have it. You can't really do anything about it because, well, if you don't have that inherent talent since you were born, I mean, can't do anything about that. Sorry, boohoo, right? It's also very easy to confuse talent with good fortune. Good fortune is just luck, I think. It's basically luck, right? For example, there is literally purely no correlation between you being born in a privileged family or a dirt poor one, right? You didn't do anything, you didn't exist for that matter. Maybe the family did something morally bad, I don't know. But you, as the baby, as the child, you didn't do anything. So that's just like a matter of true luck, right? And talent, in a way, is luck, but it's a better form of it. Simply put, you're born with a gift you did nothing to deserve, and it helps you in life. It's, as I mentioned before, a thing of beauty. I can't think of anything else to describe talent. Talent is an amazing thing. But then also comes the harm of having amazing things. You always want more of it. That's one problem. Second of all, you sometimes don't have it. You always compare yourself with others if you don't have it. I mean, I'm sure that you would want to compare yourself with others if you do have it, right? Because what's the fun in life without having to compare with others? And in a way, talent directly conflicts with good fortune because talent gives you a chance to rise to the top of the ranks despite your bad fortune, right? You're born in a poor family, but merit, that is exactly what you're talking about, merit. And talent allows you to actually rise to the top of the ranks economically and socially. You're able to make a name of yourself, especially when you have talent, because it's so unnatural, right? For example, yes, as I mentioned before, this requires a lot of training, hard work, etc. But if you just go up on the stage and you start singing with this natural talent, it's so uncommon that it surprises people. It's uncommon that you can just do a backflip and have this natural body in which you're equipped to do these sporty things more than other people, right? And I think that just surprises people in a way that actually acknowledges the fact that the person is really talented and you should nourish that talent. I think that's the emotional and moral establishment that society has already given us, and I think it's a good thing. In a way, it's a good thing. Of course, if you have a talent, if you're good at something, society should nourish it. Your community should actually aid in trying to succeed, in trying to find your success, etc. I think that's insofar as it doesn't really break down any social aspects or whatnot. I think that to that extent it's a good thing. But here's the sad thing. Not everyone is talented in things, right? Some people are talented in sports and other things like studying, academics, science, math, whatever. Some people are talented in really random things like clicking, like gaming, or shoving food into your mouth and eating quickly. But it's better than nothing, right? I mean, I would rather have a talent than nothing. Like, come on. Having a talent is pretty cool, and some people don't really notice their talents at all. I mean, I want to believe that we are good at one thing, right? We're good at least one thing in our life, and it may be really random, it may be really useless, but it's to the extent that it you actually have that talent. I think that you should nourish it, right? Who knows what may come out of that. One day you'll make a trend of clicking, etc. Think to that extent, it's a good thing. Of course, these people need to work hard. I mentioned that. Maybe even harder to hone their skills, right? And honing skills isn't easy. I know this is kind of extreme, but it's very hard to hone your skills once you've actually lost control. I think the prime example of this would be Elsa from Frozen. I know it doesn't sound realistic, but there are actually people who struggle with trying to figure out what they're good at, figure out how to use their talents, how to use their superpower. And Elsa primarily has trouble with that. She often can't control it and it hurts people. I think in a way, in a sense, that works in real life too. And it's also very detrimental. So, yeah, nothing comes free in life. I think talent is not the best example of it, but it's also an example in which you're given this miraculous superpower. You need to hone it. You need to actually work hard to nourish that skill, to actually use it in a way that helps humanity and society. I think that's a skill that everyone can work on, right? I think that should be learned by everyone from in whether school or real life or experience, etc. In one way or another, I think that's a useful skill to learn. Now, as a person who's not a math genius or science genius or anything, it's pretty sad to not have a useful talent. I think everything tragic about talent is pretty self explanatory. Merit is overrated. Talent, I think it's perfectly rated, although it is very rare for something to be perfectly rated. We tend to underwhelm or overwhelm ourselves. I think that's a key part of society, but oh well, like it has its harms. And everything makes more sense in a less equal world. And I know this sounds weird, but we're better able to take perspective in important things in a less equal world. So, for example, in a world where we didn't have a history of women fighting for their rights, about people of color not like fighting for their rights. I think that's a crucial part in which we have to realize the moral aspect of our living human body, right? I think morality and being humane and justice are impossible pursuit of justice is the main thing that distinguishes us from just pieces of meat wandering around the earth. I think this has been covered by multiple philosophers, a lot of commentators, a lot of speakers, etc. But I think that's really what distinguishes us from just animals because we tend to impress ourselves. I think that's the main thing. If the world wasn't equal, we wouldn't value equality. I mean, to think about it, we wouldn't need to value equality in the first place, but the moral compass of humans exists because of inequalities. As I mentioned before, of what the history in which people are able to mold and shape our viewpoints about the world we live in now, we need to keep pursuing that perfect image of humanity that we look for, that world without inequalities. That's the kind of image that we would try to hope for. And yes, I mean, yes, that wouldn't be needed in any circumstances if we lived in a world without inequalities. But to be honest, that's very, very unrealistic. And I also think that our pursuit for this world without inequalities is also very overrated, but it's worth trying. It's worth trying because without that, all of our moral values would just be diminished, right? Yes, there are more pressing inequalities than not being talented but for the purpose of this podcast, let's just say that it is incredibly horrifying to not be talented in something that you want to be talented in, art, whatever you want to be talented in, right? Speaking, debating, writing, reading, etc. I think it's all useful except for the fact that it won't matter in the end. I mean, this is going to sound really cliche, but we're all going to die, right? We're all going to die at one point in our lives, and everything will just stop existing in a sense. It's very weird how we try to pursue a life in which we will be fulfilled, but when we actually die, for the purpose of this podcast, I think there's nothing really to go on because you no longer exist. And that is extremely terrifying. And yes, there could be a perspective that argues, oh, well, you're more likely to be happy if you have a talent. Yes, that's very likely. If you have a talent, you're more likely to be good at something, and being good at something brings validation, and in my experience, validation means happiness. That's a reasonable and plausible argument to run by. But yes, talent is incredibly horrifying, it is petrifying, it brings detriment to the world, it brings inequality to the world, it brings a status of imbalance, and I can literally see that and witness it and experience it every day I'm in school. Every day someone is better at something than me. Maybe because they tried harder, maybe because they're just talented, right? They didn't study for this test, but they still got 100. It's difficult to understand, it's difficult to comprehend, it's difficult to fathom how the world works. And I think to that extent, we're able to say that talent is an incredibly horrifying inequality. But overall, I like talent. Maybe I'm a little biased when I say this, having been born in a relatively privileged family that nourishes me and my talents, even if I may lack in some areas. Until you can explain to me what a world without inequalities and shame would look like, I'm fine with the world given to me. I'm fine with the little inequalities that I need to fight every day, the things that I need to witness, the things that I need to that actually drive and impel me to rise up the ranks with maybe my merit, maybe my talent, but most of all with my hard work. Maybe the American dream is overrated as well. Maybe it will never work in this perfect society when someone dirt poor can rise up the ranks to the very, very top. Maybe that's overrated and maybe that's unrealistic. But until you can give me a world with perfect equalities, with a perfect sense of what morality looks like, what justice looks like, I'm fine with this world. I give the sheer coding of talent a 4. This podcast was written and produced by me, Minnie Kim. If you have any comments or reviews, please feel free to write any and all thoughts on your podcast reviews. If you would like to suggest an affliction for me to sugarcoat, please email me via afflictionsugarcoated@gmail.com. I have a question for you to end this podcast. What is a weird talent that you have? I mean, it's a weird question to think about, but we always have a weird talent. I'd just like for you to think about what it is, maybe hone it, like I mentioned. Okay, hope you have the most wonderful day.